So hello everyone! Today we're going to talk about capital gain on the sales, exchange, and other disposition of domestic stocks directly to buyer. So, before we start, let us first talk about what is domestic stocks. Ano nga ba yung domestic stocks natin sinasabi? So, domestic stocks are the stocks of American companies traded on the various stocks exchange. Domestic stocks are evidence of ownership to the right to ownership. In a domestic corporation, regardless of its features, such as, let's have the first one, which is the preferred stocks. So, preferred stock, it is own unique type of stocks. When we say preferred stock or when we buy preferred stock, ikaw dito yung tatawagin preferred shares holder. And as a preferred shares holder, you usually do not have voting rights. So, when the important company decision are voted on, wala kang boto. Ibig sabihin nun, di wala kang ang boses sa kumpanya. So, karamihan sa investors don't consider preferred stock actually an ownership in the company. Hindi nila kinukonsider dyan. So, as a preferred shareholder, you are entitled to be a dividend. A preferred stock dividend is a usually determined fixed amount that paid on the regular schedule. Many investors like the fixed dividend dahil alam nila yung exact amount na makukuha nila pagdating ng dividend payment, and it's resemble the coupons payment of a bond, but the board of directors can vote to not give the dividend. There are a lot different types of preferred stocks, and each have unique benefits and limitations. For example, assume that the company doesn't pay you a dividend. If you own cumulative preferred stock, the company must pay all the missed dividend and at the later date. Pero kapag naman kapag nagmamay-ari ka naman ng non-cumulative preferred stock, di hindi ka nababayaran ng company ng kahit ano. Wala kang matatanggap. As a preferred shareholder, you have a moderate risk. Kung mababankrupt yung company, ang mga preferred shareholder ang mga preferred shareholder ay hindi ang unang investors na mapapabalik yung pera. Ang una nilang babayaran is yung mga creditors who are investors that loan it money, then the company pay preferred shareholder. And finally, it pays common shareholder, which is the other type of stocks. May risk din na walang pera na matira sa pag nabigyan na yung mga creditors. So, you also have the moderate reward potential as a long, stable, and company. Mababayadan ka at makukuha mo yung dividend. But if the company becomes more profitable, hindi ka na makakakuha ng shares sa additional profit mo. Dahil ang dividend mo ay fixed. Ibig sabihin, ang share price mo ay magiging stable lang. Hindi siya magi-increase, hindi rin siya magdi-decrease. Remember, preferred stock has its own unique type of stock. So, dapat alam mo yung characteristics ng preferred stocks mo bago mo ito bilhin. So, let's move on to the next stocks, which is the common stocks. Ano nga ba yung common stocks? So, ang common stock, it is the main class of stocks. Pansin nyo ba na kapag may nag-aalok ng stocks, they usually preparing to common stocks. Kasi kapag bumili ka ng common stocks, magiging owner ka nung company. Kasi kapag bumili ka ng common stock na yon, tatawagin ka na nilang common shares holder. At bilang isang common shares holder, you usually have a voting rights. Meaning, you can vote on important company issue, tulad ng pag-elect ng board of directors. Bilang common shares holder, may karapatan kang bumoto kung sinong gusto mo maging member ng board of directors. Dito, the more common stock na ininvest mo or you own, the more votes na meron ka. For example, meron kang 5 common stocks. So, ibig sabihin nun, meron ka ding 5 boto. Makakatanggap ka din ng dividend, which is a share of the company's profit, but the common shares holder are not guaranteed in the dividend. The board of directors vote of it kung makakatanggap ka. Yon, pinagbobotohan niyo ng board of directors kung yung common stockholders ay makakatanggap ng dividend. nasa high-risk position din ang mga common shareholder. Kasi kapag na-bankrupt yung company, ikaw ang last na makakakuha ng pera. Last na mapapabalik yung pera na ininvest mo doon sa company. Kasi sabi ko nga kanina, ang kauna-unahang makakatanggap ng pera pabalik ay ang mga creditors. Tapos preferred shareholders, and finally, ikaw, yung common shareholders. Nakakatakot din siya kasi baka wala ng perang matira sa'yo, kaya high risk din yung position mo. Dahil nabigay na lahat yun sa una. You also have the potential for the highest reward kung successful ang sales price at lalago sila. For example, yung company is nag-success, ibig sabihin, yung investment mo is lalago din. Hindi kagaya na sa preferred stocks na stable lang siya. Kapag nalugi ang company, lugi ka din. Kapag naging successful ang company, tataas din yung price ng investment mo. So remember that common stock is the main type of stocks. So make sure you know the risk and potential reward owning the common stocks. Let's move on to another stocks, which is a stocks right. So stocks right, it is an instrument issued by the companies to provide current shareholder with the opportunity to preserve and fractions of corporate ownership. So to act of offering corporate ownership. You return over the right you receive, typically one of each shares of stock you own and the money needed to make the purchase within the required period of 2 to 4 weeks. So dito, you don't have to buy the additional shares. Pwede mo siyang i-transfer sa iba kung gusto mo. But buying helps you maintain the same percentage of ownership you lead. And you had in the company bago i-issue yung shares rather than having the percentage include. And that's the stocks right. Right now we're going to talk about the another stocks, the stocks option. So stocks option is gives investor the right but not an obligation to buy or sell a stock at an agreed upon the price and date. So, ito ay isa lamang sa form ng equity na derivative. May two types ng options to, ang puts at saka ang calls. So, kapag puts, ito yung bet that stock will fail. Kapag calls naman, ito yung bet ng stock will raise or naging successful. So, dito, you can use your stock as an option to buy shares of stocks without paying any market price. Next one, the stock warrants, another stocks. Stocks warrant is a derivative contract between a public company and investors. So, here in the stock warrant, a warrant gives you an holder the right to buy sells shares of stock to or from issuing public company to specified price public as in a specific date. Holding warrants are under no obligation to buy or sell underlying stocks. And the last one unit of the participation is any association, recreation, or amusement club. Another stocks, this is another stock. For example, is yung mga golf, polo, or similar clubs. This is what we call fair market value. It is a determinant of value home that and what it sell for an open market. Typically, in willing seller and buyer will agree on a property on the fair market value using the reasonable knowledge of the property in transactions. So, yun nga yung mga stocks, the preferred stock, common stocks, stocks right, stocks warrant, fair market value, and stocks option. So, let's move on to another topic. The capital gain tax cover not only sales of domestic stocks for cash but also exchange of domestic stocks in a kind of other disposition, such as number 1, foreclosure of property in settlement of debt. It is a legal process by which a lender attempts to recover the amount owed on the default loan by taking ownership of the mortgage property and selling it. Typically, default is triggered when a borrower misses a specific number of payment date or a monthly payment, but it can also happen when the borrower fails to meet the other terms in the mortgage document. So foreclosure process varies by state, but in general lenders try to work with the borrowers to get them caught up on the payments and avoid foreclosure. So number 2 is pacto de retro sales. Sales with buyback agreement. So here, it is a contract of sales with stipulation that seller shall have the right to buy back the property within the agreed period. Ito yung maaari mong bilhin pabalik yung property mo within the period stipulated in the contract by at hindi nag-exceed ng sa 10 years. Ito yung ito yung process in which the sales is pwede mong bilhin pabalik. So, the next one is conditional sales. Sales which will be perfected upon completion of certain specified condition. So, here, the conditional sales is a sales in which the title of property remains the seller unit, some condition is met as the payment of the full purchase price. Dito naman, yung title ng property is mananatiling nasa seller hanggang yung goods ay makondition. Minsan ay nakukuha lang ito pag tapos na yung bayaran. Kahit na may kakayahan ka na bilhin na yung whole property, is hindi mo pa rin siya makukuha hanggat hindi nakukondisyon yung property. So, let's have the next one, the voluntary buyback of shares by the issuing corporation. Redemption of shares which may be reissued and not intended for cancellation. So here, involuntary buyback of shares by the issuing corporation, ito naman yung in the word na itself, voluntary buyback. Ibig sabihin, kusa mong bibilin ulit pabalik yung property at nag-issue ka doon ng corporation na gusto mong bilhin nyo siya pabalik. Using a legal process naman siya. Nag-file ka ng issue para maibalik yung sa yung property that not intended for collections. That's it. Next, we have the terms other disposition does not include. First is issuance of stock by corporation. So, when we say issuance of stock by corporation, it is the stocks link up the maximum amount of shares company can issue to each shareholder. This is usually made up the total of outstanding treasury stock shares as well as shares company has regained ownership. Issued stock refer to the shares that company is able to sell. So, number 2, exchange of stocks and services. The general rule of recording issuance of stock for services, it is a similar of the rule in issuing stocks for non-cash assets. So here, it is a record of the basis of fair market value or services availed for the fair market value of shares, whichever we can objectively determine. So, ito yung mga stocks and exchange na common and authorized point na exchange. Ito yung mga non-cash asset na ino-offer kapalit ng mga stocks. So, number 3 is redemption of shares in mutual fund. It is a company must occur within 7 days of receiving and request for redemption from invest because mutual funds are priced only once per day. Investor who wish to redeem their money must place an other order because before the market close of the time set by the natural fund. So, dito, itong redemption of sales in mutual fund ay isang process ng pag-withdraw ng mga units in order to obtain your return from funds. Kung gagamitin mo to, you will receive funds in your account instantly. So, the next one is worthlessness of stocks. So, how can we say that the stocks is worthless? So, we can identify if the taxpayer can show that the security had value at the end of the year preceding the deduction of the year. The IRS recommend investor account for worthless securities as if they were capital assets that had been dumped or exchanged to the last day of the taxpayer. So number 5 is the redemption of stocks for collection by issuing corporation. So here, you want your stock to be redeemed. Gusto mo mapabalik sa'yo yung stocks. In other words, you want to buy it back at some future date. One advantage of issuing redeemable share is that gives the company flexible if they choose the buyback shares later date. So, the last one is gratuitous transfer of stocks. Gratuitous transfer means any gratuitous transfer of equity security to third party, including without limitation, and any such of transfer pursuant to or as the result of gift and other such transfer made on less than full and adequate consideration. So, in a gratuitous transfer of stock is different from sales and other bilateral contractual exchange and from transfer made to repay the debt and satisfy by the judgment. And that is the capital gain on sales, exchange, and other disposition of domestic stocks directly to the buyer. Thank you.